is Rodgers going to play in 2024? I think he is. All right, welcome in. It is the February 14th Breer Report. We are now 5 days into the offseason. We are looking forward, not back anymore. And we have a lot to get to. The Combine is now just over a week away. When a lot of NFL business gets done, we are about a month out from the start of free agency. The draft's about 2 months away. And I'm outfitted by Homage. Thanks for sending the gear along. Got all these things in the mail the other day to celebrate our 9th national championship at Ohio State. So shout out to Homage for helping me out there. And we're going to jump right into it with the biggest story of the week, maybe one of the biggest stories of the offseason going forward. A lot of uncertainty still, but we did get a piece of certainty over the last 5 or 6 days in the Jets' decision to move on from Aaron Rodgers near the end of last week. They flew him to New Jersey. They'd had a number of discussions with him since putting Aaron Glenn in place as the new head coach, Darren Muji in place as the new general manager about his future. And they made the decision that they are going to move on. We saw the statements come out. The Jets have made it clear which way they're going. Obviously now there's still, some uncertainty about whether or not Aaron Rodgers is going to play in 2024. I know he didn't completely tip his hand to the Jets on that. So going forward, that's the next piece of the puzzle. Is Rodgers going to play in 2024? I think he is. That's just my informed opinion on this would be that I think he is. And I'm not getting this from the horse's mouth or anything else. I'm just putting pieces together here. And I go back to the summer. I sat down, had a long conversation with Aaron Rodgers about where he's been, where he's at, where he's going. And, one of the big things he brought up is a reason for coming back in 2024 and playing in 2024 is he didn't want to go out the way that he went out in 2023 with a torn Achilles. Another thing he said was that he wanted to play not 1, but 2 years. He had sort of agreed and talked to the Jets about the idea of playing at least 2 seasons. 2023 season obviously went by the wayside just a few plays in with the Achilles injury. So he wanted to give them those 2 years. Obviously, that's not going to happen now. But if you take those elements into play, that he planned to play 2 years, that he didn't want to go out like the way he went out in 2023, it would at least indicate that maybe there'd be a desire to play there again in 2025. To me, the wild card here is after going through what he's went through the last 2 years, does he want to put himself through everything that he went through to get ready to play another season? And, doing this, the older you get, the more goes into it. It is not just a 6 or 7 month commitment from the start of training camp to the end of the regular season and then whatever playoffs you're involved in. It's a year-long commitment. It's getting yourself ready in March and April and May and June and exercising a certain way and living your life a certain way and eating a certain way and sleeping a certain way. You have to do a lot of things when you're at that age to perform at the level that these guys perform at. And so, I think for Aaron Rodgers, that's the decision is, do you want to pour another year of your life into this? I think ultimately the answer is probably yes, but I don't know that he knows for sure what he's going to do yet. So then the two sides to this, where do the Jets go? The Jets don't have a broken situation. I think that's one mistake people are making is that they see, okay, they're pulling the plug on Aaron Rodgers. That probably means Devontae Adams is gone. So were other guys that were there because Aaron Rodgers was there. Like now they're re-signing. That doesn't need to be the case. If you look at the group of young talent that Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh were able to put in place, Olufashanu, Ollie Vera-Tucker on the offensive line, Garrett Wilson at receiver, Breece Hall at running back. On the defensive line, you've got Jermaine Johnson and Quentin Williams. At linebacker, you've got Quincy Williams. In the secondary, you've got Sauce Gardner. That's a bunch of high-level talent, Pro Bowl type talent, and guys that are not 31, 32, 33 years old, guys that are either entering the prime of their careers or in the prime of their careers. And so, I don't think this is a situation where because you lose the quarterback that you've got to completely flip the whole thing upside down. They can build going forward, and they could have an attractive situation for a bridge type of quarterback, be it Kirk Cousins or someone else. So it'll be interesting to see what they do at quarterback. I think right now, based on where they're picking in the draft, it seems unlikely that they're going to go all in on one of the rookie quarterbacks and say, this is the guy that we're going to build around for the next half decade. This is the guy that Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn are going to tether their job security to. So my guess is they go with some sort of bridge quarterback and try to be competitive in their first year there. We'll see what happens. As for the Rodgers part of the equation, if he does decide to play, there are teams that fit for him. Two that I think are particularly good fits. One, and I don't know if the Jets could prevent this from happening. I know they wouldn't want it to happen, would be the Giants. A lot of people fighting for their jobs there. I think they've got a team that's relatively close to being ready to win. You've got a left tackle in Andrew Thomas, who I think is a franchise level player. When you lost him last year, the whole thing kind of fell apart up front. You got some other pieces you put in place in that offensive line where I think they could make a leap in that area. Malik Neighbors, number one receiver. You've got good young talent in that roster. The defensive front, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence. So that's one team. The Steelers are another. And the Steelers would make some sense to me because I look at where they're at. And again, they've got a lot of players that are sort of on the back end of the prime of their careers, Minkah Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, where how can we get good enough so we can maximize what we've already got on the roster as fast as possible and compete for a championship with guys like Watt and Fitzpatrick still in their prime? To me, like Stafford would be the ideal for them if Stafford were to become available. But Rodgers is one that could make some sense for them as well. And would Cleveland be interested in Rodgers? Would Vegas be interested in Rodgers? If the Rams were to move on from Stafford, could they bring in Rodgers as a bridge? I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have some opportunity if he decides to play in 2024. That's the bottom line. All right. Our second topic for the week. Again, the Combine. I will arrive in Indianapolis 10 days from right now. It's hard to believe. And that is, for a lot of us, the unofficial kickoff to the 2025 offseason. And the Combine invite list went out. So what do you need to know? Well, first of all, the usual suspects are the ones leading the pack as far as having the most invitees to the Combine. Ohio State, my alma mater, leads the pack with 15 guys invited to the Combine. Second, you have Georgia and Texas tied for second most at 14 apiece. And then Oregon has 12. All four of those teams were in the CFP quarterfinals. Not surprising that those four would lead the pack. What do you need to know about the makeup of the overall group? Well, to me, the reality of this draft is that the strength of it is probably from about 20 to 70. Just talking to people involved, this isn't a particularly strong draft at the top. It's not one that you want to have a high pick in. And it's going to be hard for teams that are picking up high to trade down. So where's the strength? Well, you got two guys who I think would be indisputably blue chip level players. One is the two-way Heisman Trophy winner, Travis Hunter from the University of Colorado. The other be Abdul Carter, blue chip pass rusher from Penn State, who's going to draw a lot of comparisons to Micah Parsons. He's a little smaller as a pass rusher. He's played off-ball linebacker as well. He's got some of that position flexibility, and he wore 11. Like LeVar Arrington, our buddy, did at Penn State, and passed it down to Micah Parsons and Abdul Carter. So those two guys would be the blue chip guys. After that, I think you've got a large group of players that there's going to be some disagreement on that probably wouldn't go in the top 10 in some other draft years, right? And so in that group, you've got Will Campbell, the left tackle from LSU. You got Kelvin Banks, the left tackle from Texas. You've got Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan. Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan. Jalen Walker, the hybrid outside linebacker defensive end from Georgia. Mikael Williams, the defensive end, the big rangy defensive end from Georgia. Teteroa McMillan, the big wide receiver from the University of Arizona. Ashton Genty from Boise, the running back. So you look at that group of players, and this is why teams are going to want to trade down, because teams are going to look at this and say, well, the difference between 5 and 10 isn't huge. The difference between 10 and 15 isn't huge. So can I move down and get some capital and still get a player that would be equal to the one that I'd be getting in my slotted spot? And that's why it's going to be tough to trade down, because I don't know how many teams are going to say, look at one player and say, yes, we need to go get that guy. So I think that's part of the dynamic. And then there's the quarterbacks, which, if you are a team wanting to trade down in the top 5, you're hoping the quarterbacks get hot. The top 2 guys that everybody's been talking about, Shedeur Sanders, Deion's son from Colorado, and then Cam Ward from Miami. Both those guys are good players. I don't think those guys are close to the top three last year. I think if Caleb Williams, if Jaden Daniels, if Drake May were in this year's draft, any of those three guys would be the number one overall pick. And I don't know that it would be particularly close. So if you're a team picking in the top five and you don't need a quarterback, what you're looking for is for Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders to get hot over the next couple of months. We'll see if it happens or not. But there are teams that don't think there's much separation from between those two and a guy like Jackson Dart from Ole Miss who could go at the top of the second round. So if you're a team like the Giants or if you're a team like the Titans, you could look at it and say, we could get Jackson Dart at the top of the second round. Maybe we get a bridge quarterback for him to compete with. And then, if it doesn't work out, we can jump back in the first round and draft one again next year. Whereas if you take Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders in the top five, how does that work out for you? It's an interesting question to ask because I think at that point, save for the example of the Cardinals drafting quarterbacks in back-to-back years up high when it was Josh Rosen in 2018 and then Kyler Murray in 2019. Usually when you're drafting a quarterback that high, it takes you out of the market for one for the next few years. So lots of moving dynamics with the quarterbacks, lots of moving dynamics in the class. With the makeup of the class is what it is. It'll be an interesting draft year. And I think what this draft lacks in quality at the top, it is going to bring us in storylines. Again, you got the Shedeur storyline. The Travis Hunter storyline is fascinating to me. Abdul Carter's a damn good player. What is Cam Ward? I think we're going to be talking a lot about his personality, everything that's around him. So there's at least going to be stuff to talk about over the last couple of months, which of course we're grateful for here. Finally, our third topic, there is one big job still open in the NFL. That's the Jaguars General Manager job. Ian Cunningham, the Assistant General Manager from Chicago, is interviewing with the Jaguars today. I picked him out as a leading candidate a couple of weeks ago. I told you really when this process started that I thought there were two candidates that stuck out. One was Ian Cunningham, the other is John Robinson. But there have been a bunch of other guys that have gone through there over the last few days. Terrence Gray, well-respected director of player personnel from Buffalo, was a finalist in Tennessee. He's a guy to watch. Brandon Brown, the assistant GM with the Giants, he interviewed there as well. Trey Brown, senior personnel executive from the Bengals. They've talked to a bunch of different guys over Zoom this week. They want to get this wrapped up before the combine. They're obviously behind a lot of other teams when it comes to where they are in the process, not having a general manager this close to the combine. I would say one thing to watch for the Jaguars job. They've got a 52-year-old first-time executive in Tony Baselli as kind of the overseer of this over the top. They're Hall of Fame offensive tackle from the 90s. They've got a first-time head coach in Liam Cohen, a very young first-time head coach in Liam Cohen, who was the offensive coordinator at Kentucky a year ago. Do you want to have another first-time guy in there, or do you want to bring some experience into the general manager position? And that's, I think, the question when you look at Ian Cunningham and you look at John Robinson, two different sides of the spectrum. On one end, you've got John Robinson, who's got the experience and the know-how, having done it. He's been in the division. He was there as the general manager of the Titans. On the other end, you've got Ian Cunningham, who doesn't have the experience, but has the pedigree. And you go through where he's been. He was with the Ravens. He came up in the Ravens system. He was one of Ozzie Newsome's guys. His first big job in Baltimore was as the Southeast area scout. Everybody who knows the Ravens organization knows that Ozzie Newsome does not give that job to just anybody. Ozzie Newsome, of course, is an Alabama guy. He is not handing Alabama's area to any scout. He's handing it to a guy that he thinks is a rising scout in his system, and that's what Ian Cunningham was. Ian then goes to Philadelphia, works under Howie Roseman, got to see it with Joe Douglas and Andrew Berry as the directors there, so he got to see that. And then over the last 3 years, he's worked in Chicago as a true number two, a guy who's involved in every part of every facet of the operation in Chicago. So he is ready, but he doesn't have the experience. He has the pedigree, but he doesn't have the experience. So those two guys, I'm not saying one of those two guys will definitely get it, but I think those are two strong candidates, and you're getting two pretty different things with those two guys. We'll see how that all plays out. As for me, we're going to see if we can squeeze another Breer Report in there for you next week, but I'll be off skiing next week, which is how I unplug, which is how I clear my head. Best thing in the world to do to get your mindset mind right for the off season. And I'm going to go do that. Hopefully my phone won't work up on the mountain. And then we'll be back with all kinds of coverage for you from the Combine in Indianapolis. Can't wait to cover the offseason with you guys. This feels like a new beginning here with this show here today. We're going to keep it rolling through free agency, through the draft. Make sure to check out all of the stuff that we have coming for you here on our YouTube page and also on the website. We'll see you guys next time.